Sendika, Inabeka, Miaro, Miara, Endo, Miaro, Miara, Ejumedia, Inabeye, Miaro, Miara, Endo, Miaro, Miara.
Fellow Ghanaian citizens, the Art Teachers Association of Ghana, ATAG, greets you all for your enduring love for the nation. On this special day set aside for awareness creation about the great importance of museums in historical, educational, and sociocultural development of nations, we, the Art Teachers Association of Ghana, join hands with the International Council of Museums to celebrate this special day on the theme Museums for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion. We celebrate all Ghanaian museum staff, whether working in private or public institutions, dead or alive. We congratulate you for your efforts. Ayeko. In celebrating this day, it is important to take stock of the progress of Ghana's national museums since its official opening on March 5, 1957, in order to know its current state of affairs, as well as the current state of the regional museums. This, we believe, will inform us to know whether or not the core mandate for the establishment of the museums have been fulfilled. This address basically focuses on the idea of African museums before the birth of Christ. Why the need for establishing Ghana National Museum? Brief history of the National Museum, and major challenges of Ghana's national museums, and the way forward. The idea of African museums before the birth of Christ. Now, regarding that, the concept of storing artworks in special buildings to protect them for historical, socio-emotional, and cultural purposes have roots in Africa, but the narrative has not been represented as such. It is evident that centuries before the birth of Christ, Africans had built 106 spectacular architecture called pyramids in Kemet. Kemet is the original name of Egypt. It was later renamed by the Greeks as Egypt. These pyramids were built in about 2800 BC. About 200 pyramids were also built in Sudan and Nubia. The buildings of the pyramids, among other things, was to keep the dead alive through the art of keeping physical evidence of past and present of the dead for posterity. The belongings, artifacts, artistic life, and the heroic deeds of the dead were preserved. In this sense, the pyramid serves as a museum. The idea of museums was therefore influenced by the construction and purpose of pyramids. Again, the narrative has been associated with Greek mythology. Egyptian concept of museums was fueled by belief in life after death, a common belief to Africans. Let's look at why establishing Ghana National Museum. Museums serve as the powerhouse of a nation's material and non-material cultural history. Museums are duty-bound to identify, collect, document, and preserve the artistic heritage and culture of their respective country in which they are established. The task of museum is to consolidate and display its exhibits for public education, entertainment, and other relevant purposes. Engagements with the museum exhibit help to shape identities. Now, based on historical, socio-emotional, political, and cultural benefits of museum, the Ghana National Museum was established and opened to the public on the 5th of March, 1957, at the eve of independence. Just a year of its existence, that was in 1958, the hard-working Museums and Monument Board and the then Ministry of Education plan of widening the scope of the museum with particular reference to its research program and usefulness to a country which was fast developing. They therefore proposed the extension of the museum building. They proposed story building, which included a library, conservation laboratories, ethnographic section, archaeology section, and 500-seater conference hall and office space for administration purposes, as well as lecture theatre was planned. 54 years after the overthrow of President Nkrumah, who initiated this project, the construction of the main museum building near the temporary structure is still at its foundation stage. The place has become an abode for squatters. It has been left into ruins. Interestingly, Ghana National Museum is one of the oldest museums in West Africa. This plan of building an extended and bigger museum has not been done yet. The National Museum in Accra still inhabits the 1957 temporary structure, which was meant to be one of the galleries of the original structure. Sadly, fellow Ghanaians, this temporary structure leaks, making the collections unsafe. On December 24, 2015, this National Gallery of the Ghana Museum was closed to refurbish the leakages when it rains. Sadly, due to lack of political will, the renovation, which began in 2015, has not been completed to date. In addition to the Ghana National Museum, is the Museum of Science and Technology near Accra Technical University, former Accra Poly. These museums, which has not been completed fully, also leaks. Fellow citizens, you may be wondering, if this is the conditions faced by national museums sited in the capital of the nation, what then is the situation of those outside the capital? There are also regional museums which are unfortunately inhabiting castles and forts which were not meant as museum buildings. They are Volta Regional Museum in Ho, Cape Coast Castle Museum, St. George's Castle in Elmina, Usher Fort Museum, Fort Apollonia Museum of Nzima Culture and History, and others. Museum buildings are well planned and constructed such that the amount of air that enters it is restricted in order not to destroy the exhibit. The forts and castles in themselves are monuments and need to be protected. The reason for the establishment of regional museum in 1950s was to speed up greatly the work of collecting specimens of indigenous crafts works and artworks. Besides, it was to encourage people to cultivate the habit and to take pride in donating specimens for national collection instead of selling them to tourists. And also, it was done for the people of Ghana to learn about their cultural heritage. Very important reason for the establishment of the regional museums. Fellow citizens, it will surprise you to know that the Ghana National Museum is older than some Asiatic museums, including National Art Museum of China. The construction of the National Art Museum of China began in 1958 and was completed and opened to the public in 1963 under the chairmanship of Mao Zedong. The museum is a national cultural landmark after the foundation of the People's Republic of China. The building, with 21 exhibition halls, is in its 6 stories, covers an area of more than 18,000 square meters. The museum boasts of an exhibition area of 6,660 square meters. The robust development of the National Museum of Art in China benefits greatly from the support of the central government and direct leadership of the Chinese Ministry of Culture. The government has established a special collection fund which laid a solid foundation for the museum's collection of art treasure. Yet, Ghana National Museum was opened in 1957. What lesson can the nation learn from this? When will our leaders develop the political will to complete the building of our National Museum and include for it National Art Gallery to promote the art and art education? Fellow citizens, let's turn our attention to the major challenges. Ghana National Museum is facing leadership deficiency. It has magnificent physical infrastructure deficit, serious funding problems, and lacks proper branding strategy. Besides, the laws that establish the museums have become obsolete. Sometimes the degree of neglect of historical documentation seemingly causes the colonialists to say unkind and false things about us as a people. Despite the glowing historical feats and richness of Africans, the colonialists painted a sad picture about Africa, which needs to be demystified. The Arabs came to Africa 700 after the death of Christ, yet the Encyclopedia Britannica, 1910, page 326, wrote that, and I quote, "With the exception of the lower Nile Valley and what is known as Roman Africa, is so far as its inhabitants are concerned, a continent practically without a history and possessing no records from which such a history might be reconstructed." Frobenius, another scholar, in 1913, in page 2 of his document, also wrote, and I quote, "Africa is poorer in recorded history than can be imagined. Black Africa is a continent which has no mystery nor history." He added that if the soil of Africa is turned up today by the colonist plowshare, no ancient weapon will lie in its fury. If the virgin soil be cut by the canal, its excavation will reveal no ancient tomb. And if the axe effect a clearance of the primeval forest, it will nowhere ring upon a foundation of an old world place, unquote. But the reality is that the exhibits of the Ghana National Museums, some of them date as far back as 4000 BC. Our museums must reorient us because we have been disoriented by the colonialists. There is so much good things about Africa to say, and Ghana for that matter, that has not been said. Besides, there's so much that has been said about Africa that needs to be refuted with scholarly documentation and research that the museum is duty-bound as part of its mandatory work. Our museum must let us know our past, current realities to shape our future. Fellow Ghanaians, now let's look at the way forward. One of the solutions to the problems of the Ghana National Museum is proactive and action-oriented leadership. Such a leadership is needed to address the challenges of physical infrastructure, obsolete laws, funding concerns, and introduce a good branding strategy for the museum's development. We, the Art Teachers Association of Ghana, crave the indulgence of the media to prioritize and show interest in bringing out issues of museums as well as art-related issues, since it boils down on national identity, public art education, and enculturation of the current and future generations of Ghana. The media have demonstrated this level of proactiveness in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic and will definitely contribute in this regard. May God protect us all as we follow the guidelines and protocols for our safety and well-being as we travel through these difficult times of COVID-19 pandemic. Our National Museum must reflect our varied artistic cultures and be a powerhouse of our national history and identity. Long live Ghana. Long live the Art Teachers Association of Ghana. Thank you so much for your audience.